Thanks for that introduction, Pat. And good morning, everybody. It's looks like the stalwarts that are here. It's the last day, and it's the first session of the last day. So I see some of us have coffee, and I'm glad that you could make it out today. So what I want to talk about today is I'll just want to put things in context for the City of New York. So I'll talk about what the mission is for us, and then some of the mandates and targets that we have that guide our mission. I'll tell you where we are since we started doing this in 2005, and then go over some of our programs and accomplishments there, and then what's next for us. So our mission really, there are different motivating factors for folks in this industry, right? One may be to reduce energy consumption, one may be to just reduce costs. For the City of New York, it's really about reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Now, they're not mutually exclusive. They're all tied together, but depending on what that driving motivation is, may make a difference in what programs you implement and how you implement them. And so for the city, it's really about reducing our carbon footprint. And we take a very comprehensive approach to this. We look at it through four lenses: growth, equity, sustainability, and resiliency. And those four lenses guide everything that we do, the investments that we make. And it's more than just reducing greenhouse gas emissions. There are attendant benefits that come with that, such as reliability and resiliency improvements, air quality improvements, public health outcome improvements, equity, job development, and so forth. And so we try to tie what we do to those co-benefits and quantify them. We also look across kind of the whole spectrum of energy. We look at procurement, we look at data analysis, building retrofits, operations and maintenance, clean energy, and education and trading. We are responsible for about 80 different agencies within the City of New York and somewhere around 4,000 plus buildings. So that's our portfolio. So the targets, this really began for the City of New York in earnest in 2014. The mayor at the time, Mayor Bloomberg, released Plan NYC, and it was a sustainability plan, job development plan for the city. And then in 2015, the city committed to reducing its carbon emissions 80% by 2050 from a 2005 baseline. And with an interim goal for just buildings of a 35% reduction by 2025. That was for public buildings. So the city said, listen, we've established these very aggressive citywide targets of 80% reduction by 2050 across all sectors, but we're going to lead by example, and we're going to set a near-term goal of this 35% reduction in public buildings by 2025. And so that's really what is driving the kind of investments that we're making. And then just recently, a couple weeks ago, the mayor of New York, Mayor de Blasio, responded to the federal government's intention to withdraw the United States from the Paris Agreement by reaffirming the city's commitment to the goals and principles of the Paris Accord. And what that really meant for us was saying, what do we need to do to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius rather than 2 degrees Celsius? And so all that really means is bending the curve sooner, right? And so it didn't really change our overall strategy, but it means we've got to do more things more quickly in order to attain that. And I'm going to talk about a few of those things in just a minute. Okay. So this is a chart of our progress on reducing greenhouse gas emissions in public buildings in the city. So since this chart starts at 2008, but the tracking begins in 2000. 5, we've achieved a 24% reduction in emissions from buildings. This is just showing you by different fuel sources. The yellow is electric, the red is natural gas, and so forth. And you can see that that makes up the majority of our emissions. And you'll notice that natural gas has taken on a more important role over time than electricity. And although it doesn't show it on here, this is emissions, but if you look at it by consumption in MMBTUs, natural gas is actually even more than electric now. The gray line on the top is just normalizing for weather, so that's heating and cooling degree days, so you can see how this tracks with that, and it really is heavily influenced by weather. Okay. At the foundation of everything is data analysis, right? So if we don't have good data, we're not going to be able to manage our energy use and our emissions well. And so there's a couple things we do. We benchmark our portfolio, and we have over 3,000 buildings that are benchmarked into the EPA Portfolio Manager system, and that's about 93% of our total portfolio. We also have a digital dashboard that we develop for each of our partner agencies, and this is an example of the different types of data analysis that are presented to our agencies to help them, and they do their own data analysis as well. One of the programs that we have is to pay for energy professionals to be embedded within our larger agencies, and we have one of our representatives here, Cyril. How you doing? So they can get very close to what's happening within that agency and help develop very specific metrics. But the idea of this is to guide our investments, right? Where do we make the investments? And you know, I don't know if this has a pointer on it. So this graph is just kind of a heat map of energy use intensity, and you know, it can guide you to which buildings. The size of the square represents the size of the building, and the color represents the energy use intensity for it. So it helps guide investments. This is raw emissions. So you overlay each of these, and it'll help you to guide your investments and where to concentrate. And then we've just started a much more robust measurement and verification program. So for all the investments we make, we want to try to calibrate what's been calculated in savings to what's actual, and you know that can be widely different depending on your buildings. Most of our portfolio is very old buildings, and they're leaky and stuff, and so you may not get the efficiencies that you're expecting. I mentioned the reductions that we achieved to date, 24% reduction in building emissions. But that's a little bit, doesn't tell the whole story, because most of that is the result of a cleaner energy supply. Okay, so in New York, we've transitioned from coal and oil power plants to more natural gas power plants. We have about 25% renewables in the state, not in the city. There's less than 2% renewables in the city. But that transition is the driving emission reductions that we've seen. So on energy efficiency, we've actually only seen about a 3% decrease. Now that doesn't tell the whole story either, because that's in the face of growth, right? So over that same time period that we're measuring, as a proxy to understand what growth is, the city's capital budget has increased by 39%. So there are more investments being made. There are more programs that are being funded and stuff, and so there's growth. So it's very dynamic, and teasing it apart is a little bit tricky. So on the demand side, there's a couple things that we do. For a long time, the major program that we've had is providing competitive grants to agencies. So every year, agencies would apply for projects to us, both on the capital side and the expense side, and then we would rate those projects and we would dole out the funds to implement them. On the expense side, we have categories for both technical projects, so replacing equipment, and kind of the same on the capital side, but also non-technical studies, and that could range from buying equipment to training to outreach material and so forth. So again, trying to take a very, very systematic approach, looking across all parts of the spectrum of managing energy and greenhouse gas emissions, and really putting those investments there. And I will mention, we have now just, as a result of this, our reaffirmation to the Paris Accord, we are now implementing a new non-competitive grant program. So energy conservation measures that we know just make sense to do, or ones that typically would not meet the metrics for awarding a competitive grant, such as building envelope type work that have much longer paybacks. But we know we have to do them in order to achieve the emission reductions that we want to achieve. We are now querying all of our agencies to say, okay, for this energy conservation measure, say it's steam traps, what buildings of yours need this done? And then we will put together a contract to do that at scale across agencies. You don't have to put an application in for it. That's a bit of a burden for our partners. They may get awarded, they may not. That's kind of discouraging. So we've now started this new non-competitive program. Operations and maintenance. I can't say enough about this. We can spend all the money that we want, and we have a $2.7 billion 10-year capital plan for this. That's billions, $2.7 billion. We can spend all the money we want on this, but if we don't put the resources on the operations and maintenance side, then all we're doing is spending money, right? So this is critically important to make sure that we get the resources on that side of the ledger as well. So one of the things we have is a preventive maintenance collaborative, where we work with the city's Office of Management and Budget and our partner agencies to put together business cases for increased O&M staff, as well as tools and so forth, and fund that. And a new thing that we're starting is a load management program. This really developed out of our demand response program, where we have it's about 75 megawatts of committed load shedding each year. That brings back about $10 million to the agencies. So that money goes to each agency that participates in that. And that is a program when there's constraints on the system, we shed load. But we've got to do more than that, right? So load management is doing that all the time. And we piloted this, and the first building that we did, we saw an 18% decrease in energy consumption. So we think that's going to be successful. On the supply side, we do manage the billing and stuff for all of our agencies. We have a $700 million per year heat, light, and power budget, so that covers all energy sources except fuel oil. Fuel oil is a separate budget from that, but this is the majority. We have a QA, QC program to look at billing, find billing errors, and I can tell you, if you're not doing that, you should do it. We have recovered millions of dollars in missed billing. It's incredible, so I would encourage you to do that. And then we also provide reports to our agencies, like deviation reports. So if a building's energy use month over month from the prior year is so much above or below their previous use, it gets flagged, and then we look to see what might be the cause of that, and if it's more, are there corrective actions that we can take. We also have an energy audits and retrocommissioning program. We audit all facilities that are greater than 50,000 square feet, and from that, any retrocommissioning recommendation that comes out, we implement, and then any energy conservation measure that has a payback of 7 years or less, we're mandated to do, but we go well beyond that. The 7-year payback is very short for a lot of these things, and we've have paybacks. We look, as long as it's equivalent to the probable useful life of the equipment that we're putting in, we'll generally fund that. So if the equipment has a 20-year life and it's a 20-year payback, we'll make that investment. And this has been very successful as well with retrocommissioning. Just looking at retrocommissioning, we saw a 16% decrease in energy consumption. On renewable energy, we have a program for clean distributed energy resources, mostly PV in the city. It's difficult to do that, less anything else, right? It's very dense urban environment, but we have a 100 megawatt goal for installing solar on rooftops of public buildings in the city. To date, we have about 9 megawatts installed. We have 15 megawatts in the queue that will be done by 2019. And now we are looking beyond rooftops to parking lots and vacant land that we might have and so forth. So pushing on that, and we're also looking how might we leverage our buying power to bring in renewable energy into the city. And, you know, our preference would be to have energy actually deliverable to the city. Because of our geographic nature, that's very difficult to do. It's a load-constrained area, and to actually have it physically delivered into the city is difficult, but there are many benefits to having that, including reliability, resiliency, air quality, public health, and so forth. If we can't get that done, we will make investments to encourage new renewable energy developments outside of the city, and you know that is addressing climate change. It's not addressing in-city air quality and so forth, but we will do that. And then we have a innovative demonstration program, and what we try to do is leverage the city's assets to commercialize innovative technology and build business cases for the private sector. And our Mayor's Office of Sustainability has a program that goes out and provides technical resources and directs building owners to financial resources to do energy conservation. And we try to plug into that and demonstrate how these things might be done. And then education. This is extremely important. We developed an Energy Management Institute in cooperation with the City University of New York. We've got 13 different training courses. They range the spectrum from trade courses to energy management professional courses to administrative courses. And we've trained over 3,200 city employees to date in that. We also have a program for renewable energy and sustainability with our schools in New York City, K through 12 curriculum. We started this 2 years ago. We've trained 350 teachers to date, and we have a goal of training almost 400 teachers per year going forward. It's professional development training for those teachers, but it's also a curriculum integration. We have a partner, Solar One, that helps us with that. And it crosses disciplines, right? We don't believe it's enough just to provide that in the science courses, right? We want to see it in the history course. We want to see it in the computer science courses. And we've had some excellent success with that, where kids in computer science courses are developing websites that talk about climate change and energy efficiency reductions and so forth. In history classes, we've had debates set up on renewable versus fossil fuel, and of course in the science classes, we've had things where kids are developing designs for for panel installations on rooftops to optimize efficiency and so forth. So it's been very successful. We also have training for vocational schools to actually train people to get into the industry as they graduate from high school. And then we are also engaging the community. And we do that through a couple ways. One is trying to get at hard-to-employ populations. So we've started a program with our prison system in the city where we provide training to incarcerated folks that are getting ready to be released. So they have training while still in prison. When they get out, there's an additional training if they elect to come into that. If they finish that, then we funnel them into our job workforce program, and then try to connect them with actual jobs. And then we also run competitions with some of our cultural institutions like our libraries, and we've had a very successful competition that recently ended between the Queens libraries and Brooklyn libraries, and that really engaged the community. Everybody that comes into the library knows what's happening and stuff, and it really engages them. So that's been very successful. So last, looking forward, in order for us to do even better, and when I talked about, we've only seen this 3% reduction in energy efficiency, although it's in the face of a 39% growth. We believe the way to do this is to have deeper agency accountability, right? So each agency has their own mission, whether it's a police department or a water or wastewater treatment system or the education system. They have a mission, and we've got to work better to integrate energy management into their core mission, right? Because from the outside, where we're funding projects and stuff, you're not going to be as innovative in integrating that into your core mission. So we're doing a number of things to do that, and we're asking agencies to look at their 4-year capital improvement plans and say, what trajectory does that put you on? Where is that going to put you in 4 years? And if it's the wrong trajectory, what are corrective action plans? What energy conservation measures can we implement to change that? And even if it's the correct trajectory, what more can we do to improve that? Of course, using data to focus resources, as I already talked about, operations and management, maintenance investments. And then we're starting a carbon and energy planning initiative for each agency, specific to that agency and their buildings. And we're working with C40 to develop those. So with that, I think I'll end, and if there's time for questions, Pat.
About 5 minutes of questions.
Okay, great. Yes, sir.
All buildings, whether they're office buildings or whatever, you have to have ventilation.
Yeah.
And ventilation is where your energy waste is, because when you bring outside air in, whether it's 10 degrees or 95 degrees, you have to either cool or heat the makeup air. Now, I live in Hillsdale, New Jersey, and I happen to, at a church meeting, I happen to meet a fellow that has a facility in Hillsdale, and they manufacture these counterflow heat exchangers, air to air. And I've seen these things in operation where, in fact, this past winter, I saw 10-degree air being brought into and exhausting 70-degree air, and going through this heat exchanger, that 10-degree air picks up heat from the exhaust air, and it actually heated it up to almost 68 degrees coming in. It's about 80% to 92% efficient.
Yeah.
And from his experience, the payback is usually 2 to 3 years. So this is something maybe the city should be looking at.
Great. We'll follow up on that.
George, give me the information on that, and I'll correspond.
Yeah, in the back.
So you mentioned that you have like monitoring programs, electrical commissioning programs, electrical commissioning has had some success.
Yeah.
Curious, out of the 4,000 buildings, what percentage have you done audits or electrical commissioning?
I don't know if I know that off the top of my head. I can get you that. It's It's not a large percentage yet, but we are mandated by law to do it for all of our buildings that are, I believe, 10,000 square feet or larger. A lot of that are, many of that are schools, and that's over a 10-year cycle. So we've got to accomplish that over a 10-year cycle. It's more than 3,000 buildings that we have to do it for, you know, we right now are on a trajectory to be compliant with that, so get all 3,000 buildings over that 10-year cycle, and then we start again. But I don't know the exact percentage that we're at today. Yes?
Could you talk a little bit more about your energy master planning and initiatives for each agency?
Yeah.
And just what your expectations are around those plans because each one of them is so large and
Yeah.
individual. Cities on their own sometimes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so it's you know, there's not one size that fits all, although, you know, there are some things that cross over, like, as I mentioned, this non-competitive program, steam traps, right? We're going to just go out and replace steam traps across the buildings where that needs to happen. But you've really got to get into each building, and you've got to connect with the operations and maintenance personnel, with your energy professionals, and figure out what the right measures are. That's got to be tied to the capital planning, as I mentioned before, because often what we see what happens is, as budget decisions move up the organizational hierarchy, things get dropped out, right? And energy management often gets value engineered out. And so what part of this is making sure that the energy professionals, along with the facility O&M folks, are in the room with the capital planning decision makers when that budget decision happens. Now, that doesn't mean that every energy project is going to stay funded, but what it means is they're going to be making decisions with eyes wide open, right? Because right now it's getting lost as it goes up that organizational hierarchy. So this master planning is going to show for each agency and their buildings what their emissions and energy consumption has been over time, where they are to date, how far they have to go, what their capital plan does to that trajectory, and then what are the measures that would best fix that. So any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you very much.